Deborah, welcome to The Disenfranchised. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Ed. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thank you very much. Just trying to avoid having too much coffee at the moment, despite early mornings that I'm having from my kids. But it's all fun and games, right? Excellent. So, Deborah, obviously brought you onto the show to speak about your background and your story and how you built Reading Doctors. But before we go into that specifically, I wanted to find out, what was your first job?
My first sort of proper job was I was a double glazing telesales rep
Oh,
in the
okay.
1980s, when double glazing was still fairly new, and definitely telesales was quite a new thing as well. So that was my kind of first introduction to the business world, if you like. Yeah, I did
Excellent.
babysitting and things like that, but that was the job where I sort of mixed with grown-ups and did a proper job. Yeah.
And did you enjoy it? Was it something that you enjoyed doing?
Yeah, I did it. It was in the evenings alongside my A levels. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I loved the independence. And it was my sort of first insight into sales and leadership. So seeing like the supervisors there and the reps and how they behaved. And yeah, so I loved the sales part of it. And yeah, so it was all about, closing the deal, and basically you got commission if you managed to get a rep into somebody's house for an appointment. And yeah, it was where I kind of grew up as well, because I saw quite a few adults misbehaving. So, the sales reps and the supervisor, I'm not really sure what went on in that demo conservatory, and the Christmas trip on the coach to Peterborough. There was all sorts of things that kind of made me grow up a bit. It's also where it was the closest I ever got to hitting someone,
Wow.
because one of the other telesales blokes said I'd make a lovely page 3 model, and I was really insulted. So yeah, that was the closest I ever got to hitting anybody as well. But yeah, it was the time where I had definitely had the most disposable income, and it was all just about earning enough money to go out to buy some nice clothes, and no responsibility at all, and it was a really good time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sales can be quite a fun business to be in, right? Because it's high energy, fast paced, and yeah, you get commission for your hard work. But I know it's something that a lot of people don't enjoy, and have found quite stressful over the years to actually do. And I've not known too many teachers that have done it and then moved into as telesales and got into teaching. So how and why did you make that transition into teaching?
Well, that was my, the telesales was my first sort of businessy job, just to go alongside my A levels. But I always babysat, and I always looked after children in the holidays and did a bit of nannying in the holidays while I was doing my degree. So that was my real passion. Working with children was always my passion. And to be honest, I never thought I was sort of clever enough to be a teacher. So I thought that being a nanny, because I didn't need to get a degree for that, I thought that's what I would do. I'd be a nanny. And to my surprise, I passed my A levels. So went through clearing and got into university literally 2 weeks before the start of term. So although I think actually it was from one of my A-level teachers that said to me, you do realise you could do this. You've got the right attitude. You'll put in the right amount of work because it would be something that you're passionate about. And that was the thing, actually. I think all the way through school, I only really enjoyed things that were really meaningful and that I could see the point of doing. So once I got onto the university degree, that was when I just worked so hard, harder than I'd ever worked. because then I saw the end goal and I knew that I really wanted to be a teacher. But it was then in my first term that Peter Williams, the main English lecturer, called me in and sort of said, has anybody ever mentioned dyslexia to you? Has anybody ever talked about your spelling? And although I'd been in like what was called the remedial group at school, behind the big orange Hessian curtain, when I first started at secondary school, nobody had ever really sort of told me why I'd found English so hard, and why I sort of had that obstacle to learning. But I chose to do English A-level, and then I chose to do my main subject as English as well for my degree. So
that's pretty brave. Bearing in mind you struggled with the class, you decided to take A-levels in it, because that's obviously when things ramp up quite a bit within a particular subject. So yeah, it's quite brave to do that. But
I had really good friends, really good people around me who I think, without sort of making it explicit, they supported me, helped me, encouraged me. And I've realised now, looking back, I've always had a network around me of people who've sort of helped me with the bits that I'm weaker at, because I've always had the ideas. I've always been able to, read different books by different authors and look at the themes across them. But actually writing an essay and constructing all my ideas, really, 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 really tricky. But I know now why it was so tricky. And I used every trick in the book to avoid reading out loud. Every trick, from going to the toilet when I could see it was my turn to read. I'd sort of like estimate how long it would be before it was my turn, and then I'd ask to go to the toilet. This was when I was 18, where I could have really articulated why I didn't want to read out loud. I got my mum to take me to the opticians so I could have an eye test. I could see perfectly well, pretended I couldn't see. So I got some glasses so that when I went to my A-level English and I was asked to read, I could say, oh, I can't, I've forgotten my glasses. So literally every trick that there is to avoid reading out loud, I know it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Listening to you talk about that and how you try to avoid that challenge for you. I think about my school days, and I probably did something pretty similar actually. So I was short-sighted and didn't want to admit to it. I had glasses that I didn't like, and tried to hide them under the desk, hide them around my. If I had them on, I was like that. And nobody wants to sit at the front of the class, do they? But so I tried to sit to the side, but there was a little bit closer to the board so I could read it. So it's interesting that kids are doing that, and I guess teachers or the teaching system or us as adults, we don't necessarily see that or think about that so much, do we? Really?
No, and I think like for you, if there had just been one adult at the time who'd spotted that and had and taken you to one side and said, oh, I've noticed that you've always put yourself there, and so that's what I'm doing through the Reading Doctor. I want to be that person. I want my franchisees to be that one person that these struggling readers come across. That can help to unlock them, can see that, because what you went through, what I was going through, young people will be going through that now. So I think it's only really looking back now, I can see all of this. At the time, I was just on the path to being a primary school teacher, really, really just so delighted that I scraped, and I mean scraped, onto the course. Did amazingly well in the actual degree, but I was so happy to be on that degree course and felt so proud. I was the first one in all my extended family to go to university, relatively working class family. And my uncles were all prepared to get a coach together for my graduation, and you know,
Excellent.
it was a really big deal in my extended family as well for me to go to university. So I did really make the most of it. Yeah.
Cool. So how long were you a primary school teacher for?
19 years.
19 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
At the same school or moving
yeah,
around different schools?
yeah, I was at the same school. So I'm, you know, if I find something I love and I'm surrounded by people I really admire, appreciate, and enjoy working with, I stick with it and I'm loyal. And that's what I did. And the school became, you know, completely part of my life. And there were 3 head teachers there while I was there. So the first one was the one that employed me, and then there was the next one that was there for the bulk of my career, and then a third one came along who just wasn't aligned with my view on learning and teaching and nurturing people and children. So I was out of there pretty quick, because that's something I've always sort of promised myself, is that I'll only do something I'm really passionate about. I'll only be in a place that I'm really happy in. So if I've ever been in a situation or, you know, that I'm not completely comfortable with, or I don't really believe in it, I won't stick with it. Not sure where that comes from. I'm sure that's from somewhere deep and dark in my past, but that's kind of, I think it actually probably comes from a bit of confidence. Probably both from my parents. My dad always had his own business. My mum, who is dyslexic, not diagnosed, but definitely is. And dyslexia runs in families. My daughter's dyslexic as well. And so she compensated for her lack of education through completely, you know, investing in hours. She was on the PTA. She bought all the book schemes, you know. So actually it probably does come from a confidence that I was given as a child to not put up with something I'm not happy with. So yeah, I left that school, and I didn't have anything to go to because I just wanted to start up on my. I knew that during my teaching career, I also trained as a reading recovery teacher. So of that 19 years, part of the time I was a class teacher. During that time, I had my own children, and then I went part-time. And then I was the intervention teacher for all the children with special needs who were School Action Plus at the time and got extra funding. Basically, I had my own room. I had 6 children at a time, and I was kind of left to do what I thought those children needed. And that was a great opportunity to not necessarily have to completely stick to the rigid curriculum that they were receiving in the class, because for them that wasn't working for them, which is why they were given to me. So that was great because I got that. That was my first opportunity to kind of do what I believed in, and I could go with my intuition, and I wasn't being told exactly what I had to do. I could not make it up. But
you can tailor the teaching to the needs of the child, can't you? That's
completely, yeah. And back then, you know, I realised I couldn't even begin to teach them until I knew exactly what they already knew. Then I had to look at what their barriers were, how to overcome them. I really enjoyed that autonomy, that sort of working on my own and being trusted actually to do what I thought was right by them. And then I did some really intense training called Reading Recovery through UCL, and that was just completely enlightening. So I'd been a teacher for about 10 years at that point or more, and I thought I knew how children learn to read, but I didn't until I did this course, and then it just opened my eyes, and then there was no other way of going. I couldn't go back to the way that reading was being taught. It was just all about the child having ownership, about problem solving, about taking risks, making mistakes, self-correcting. And it was just everything that I I'd wanted and needed as a child, actually. So I left after 19 years with all this experience and the experience of being a mother of 2 children, one with dyslexia, one not. And I just thought, right, how can I utilize all of this and just, go for it on my own and set myself up as a tutor, which is what I did. And that started with a friend of a friend just saying, oh, they've got a child that's struggling with reading, could you assess them? And I did. And then she said, well, could you tutor her? And I was like, well, actually, yeah, I can. And I can do it for lots of other children. And I wasn't sure whether it was really going to take off. So I registered with a supply agency. And I think I did 2 days of supply and that was it, because I just got busy so quickly. And then I got like a consultancy job in a special needs school in a pupil referral unit. And I started during that time to create my own intervention based on my class teaching, based on my reading recovery training, based on my SEN intervention group and the experience I'd had as a mother teaching her own children. And I kind of put that all together in the mix and then came up with the Reading Doctor. So I just hit the ground running, really. I left there in the December and I was, had my first pupils the first week of January. And that was 2012, I think that was.
It's great. So you kind of almost fell into that business in some ways, didn't you? But actually it's really something that is ingrained in your whole life. You can see how you've got to that point personally because of your life journey that's brought you to there. But the question I wanted to ask you is, how did people find you when you started tutoring? How did people come to you and say, could you tutor my children? Or are you marketing yourself? How are you going about it?
Well, I set up a Facebook page straight away, a business Facebook page. And I got the name straight away as well, the Reading Doctor. So I registered straight away as a company. And then people did just come to me. So I had parents approached me from the school where I'd been teaching, or, where I'd been for 19 years. So I had pupils from there. And then I had sort of friends of friends. And then once you've got a few pupils, it's all word of mouth. And I know people say, oh, if it's word of mouth, they've still maybe seen you on Facebook or the website. But, I didn't have a website then. But it just snowballed, really. I think, your reputation follows you with something like that. And no, I don't think I even went to networking meetings or anything then. They weren't really a thing back then. And not everybody was even on Facebook all the time either then. So yeah, I would say it was mainly word of mouth.
So using your own network that I guess you'd built up over those 19 years, really, isn't it? Because there'd have been families that have had 2 or 3 kids go through the system at that time. But that's interesting.
And also my own children were still children then. So, siblings of their friends and things like that. So yeah, I was still very much in that parenting world as well.
Yeah, perfect. So in terms of moving yourself then away from the education world into running a business, how did you find that transition? Was it easy going, or did you find a lot of challenges?
No, it was really, really hard, really hard. I think I was almost institutionalized because I'd been a teacher, and I know there are a lot of downsides to being a teacher, but there are a lot of upsides as well. I just, all my pension was sorted. I got the holidays, and I did actually manage to not work in all my holidays, because I think, I know some teachers do, and I did do some work in the holidays, and I did go in and set up my classroom and things like that. But, everything, all the decisions are made for you. You're given a curriculum, you've got your salary coming in and all of that. And it was really quite challenging because I hadn't been in the world of business since my telesales job in 1988 or something. But what was really good was, I think I took it really seriously straight away. I didn't see it as just like a little hobby job. It was a business. So straight away, I set up as a limited company. I got all my insurances in place, public liability, professional indemnity, and my Facebook page and an accountant. So straight away, I knew it was going to be a business and not just something on the side of, like a part-time teaching job or something.
I guess you kind of had to do that though, right? Because you kind of fell out of love with what was ultimately your dream job at the time, and you hadn't planned to necessarily go and find another school to go and work at. So you can't live off of temp work or.
Exactly, yeah. And I hadn't fallen out of love with teaching. I was still completely in love with teaching and learning and everything. It was the system that I'd fallen out of love with and I wasn't aligned with. But at the same time, I had to hit the ground running and make up the salary that I'd been earning as a teacher. And, that was my goal, that's what I had to do in my head. That was the challenge I gave myself. And it worked really well, but it wasn't easy. And I had, I spent hours and hours and hours on it, setting everything up. And I had ridiculous high expectations, as I do of lots of things, of what my teaching space was going to be like. I spent thousands of pounds on books and resources. So it wasn't like, oh, I'll set myself up as a tutor, I'll nip down to Smith's or Amazon and get myself a few books. I knew that I would have a full classroom set up in my home with every resource that I'd ever come across that was interesting, valuable, and that's what I did. I just gathered all my resources that I'd used for the last 19 years really, and then since then obviously I've created lots of my own, but that's what I did.
So you set it up right from day one rather than kind of building it bit by bit. Set it up right from day one. So what was the most difficult thing for you to build or establish in creating that business? Was there one thing like contracts or website or something that was really tough that you found most challenging?
Well, I always find the finance bit really hard. Because that's not the bit that excites me. It's just not. It never will be. It just doesn't excite me. So, and I just find it hard anyway. So what I did was I just got an accountant from the off. I was just like, just tell me exactly what I need to do. And basically he was great because he just made it really simple. He was like, and then I also opened a business bank account from day one as well. So he said, just keep your receipts, just give me all your receipts, let me have your bank statements, and I'll do the rest. And that's what so I think that's kind of what I've done all the way through my life really. If there's areas that I am weak in, then I kind of know where to go and who to ask to help me. So yes. That's definitely my weakest area.
It's interesting. It's a conversation I've had with somebody recently, Maddie from one of my previous podcasts. She says the same thing. There's
Really?
certain parts that she's not very good at doing, but what she did was just outsource them. What's the point in stressing and making a mess of it yourself?
Yeah.
Get somebody in who knows what they're doing. And I likened it to franchising, right? So anybody in theory could go out there and set up something similar to Reading Doctor maybe, right? But there's going to be bits of it they're not very good at or they can't get right, and so their business is going to fail. But actually someone like you can provide them all of the right support and guidance to help them build that business. They're more likely to be successful, aren't they? Because they've got somebody doing the bits they're not good at.
Yeah, really. And I mean that's what with the whole franchise thing, knowing that my potential franchisees are teachers, ex-teachers. Not all teachers have little or no business experience, some of them do, but I've created the franchise offering with that in mind, and using all the obstacles that I've had to overcome due to my sort of lack of business knowledge. I've kind of taken care of those for them, so that it is basically a ready to go thing. But that's, you know, it, when I look at it all now and I look at the offering, I think, oh, you know, I wonder if people really know what has gone into it, because it is a whole journey right from my schooling and all the experiences I've had through there. And then having my daughter who's dyslexic was probably one of the most insightful things and the most influential things with my business as well. So all of that has culminated in this business that's ready to go. But yeah, quite a few obstacles on the way.
It's not just a business, right? It's a successful business, and that's the big difference. I want to kind of make sure that's clear, because like I say, anyone can set up, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get it right, because they're going to find challenges that haven't been overcome, whereas yours is a proven model that does work. But you also go one step further though, right? Don't you? You don't just provide the system and the process and the branding, you actually give them all of the materials they need as well, don't you?
Yeah, the resources that each of them get fills like a 4x4. It's boxes and boxes of stuff, even down to, you know, sellotape, glue, scissors, a bin, first aid kit, everything, literally everything that they need. Because the way I see it, if I can do all that, then they can spend more time actually teaching. So when I personally deliver all the stuff as well, because I think that's a really nice experience for me and the franchisee to do together, to set it up, physically set it up together. And basically once it's all unpacked and everything's in place, you can have a pupil, which we normally do. A pupil arrives within 10 minutes of finishing the setup, and you can start teaching. So it's deliberately done that way, because I know how long it took me to get to that stage. Because that, you know, how the offering I've got now for other franchisees isn't, you know, my first setup was nowhere near as, you know, comprehensive as what they get now.
So how long has the Reading Doctor been going? When did you start it?
So I started it in 2012, but I didn't start franchising till just over 18 months ago. So the actual franchising is quite new, but and that's because I didn't want to do that until I was really sure that I had something that other people could emulate and use. And I think that's probably most franchisors have probably gone through the process I went through. So you create a business, it becomes really successful, you get a waiting list, or you get too many inquiries, and you think, right, I need to grow this. How do I grow this? And I basically just picked up the phone to a local solicitor and said, I want to grow this. I've done a bit of my own research. I'm not sure if it's licensing or franchising I need to do. I explained it in great detail, and he just straight away said, this is franchising without a doubt, because I had a really set and clear vision about the offering. So that's how that happened. But yes, sorry, the one thing that I was going to say that I'm sure all franchisors have gone through, or anyone who wants to expand, is that you have this moment where you feel a little bit big-headed, but you think, oh, am I the only person who can do this? Like, nobody else will be able to do it, you know, to this level, because this business is all me. And then you think, actually, no, this business is definitely not all me. And then you start to unpick. That was a challenge. I had to unpick all of my systems and my thinking in order to create, I know it's traditionally called an operations manual, but I call it a handbook. I think that just sounds more friendly to me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, you know your audience, right?
Yeah. So that was really hard, because then, but it was also good at the same time, because I thought, actually, no, that this is the success of this isn't me delivering it. I've created the systems and the ways, and even down to the way we talk to the children in positive language and problem solving kind of language. So once I got it all down, it was like, yeah, this is something that, but then you don't know until somebody else does try and do it. You don't actually really know whether it's going to work. So yeah, taking me out of the equation was a good thing.
So how many franchise partners do you have working under the Reading Doctor now?
I've got 12.
12. Wow, that's pretty.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a good number after 18 months, definitely. So what lessons have you learned from helping other people to build out this business, which must feel like your baby, right? This is something you've created from the ground upwards, and you know how you want it to be delivered and how it's effective. So how have you found, guiding others through the process, and what lessons have you learned?
Oh, I'm trying to think of the lessons I've learned. Well, probably like our teaching, like the Reading Doctor method, it's finding out what each one of my franchisees already knows, what their strengths are, and how I can help them to build on that. So it's kind of modeling the way that we work with our pupils, really. It is about that, celebrating strengths. So within my franchisee network, there's wealth of different strengths, and then if any of them do have weaknesses or perceived weaknesses, then I can help them with that as well. But I think one of the main things I've learned, and this is only just really becoming evident now I have 12, is that creating a really good team, a supportive network, is really valuable, and that is certainly the case. We have this online platform where we can share ideas and support each other, and sometimes no question is a silly question. So again, it really does mirror the whole ethos of the Reading Doctor. So don't be afraid to ask if you get stuck. Someone will prompt you, will help you, will tell you, will show you. And so I think that just really is embedded throughout the whole network, which is really positive.
You might not realize it, but hearing your story earlier, it's been in there throughout your whole life, right? So when you were a child with dyslexia, your friends were your network, a support network that were helping you through that process to allow you to be successful, to get that A level and go on from there. And then in starting the business, you were using, you were supported by the network of parents and their children who then help you to build out that business. And then it's almost like it's now your turn to be that network for other people and support and share them through their journey, which is, it's a really nice way to view it, coming round full circle almost. So in terms of the Reading Doctor, and we've been talking about it for a little while, but I realized maybe people listening to this might not know exactly what the Reading Doctor does and how it helps pupils. So could you tell me a little bit more about that?
So it's a tuition service. I was going to say like no other, but that might be, I don't know. It's a unique tuition service. Tuition, but not as you know it. So it's completely bespoke to each child. So we do an in-depth assessment of any child that is brought to us who is struggling with reading. Quite often, not always, but the children who are brought to us are dyslexic. Quite often one of the parents struggled with reading themselves as well at school, and if it is dyslexia, then dyslexia runs in families. So they're brought to us, we do an in-depth assessment which does a complete stock take of what they already know. So it's not a deficit model. We don't sort of sit there with the parent and go, oh, they can't do that, they can't do that, they can't do that. We'll say, this is what they know already. These are the skills that they are using to help them. And these are the things that we're going to work on with them next in order to accelerate them with their reading, to make them feel better about themselves as a reader. So we unlock the potential, basically, in struggling readers through very high quality resources. Many of them are just unique now to the Reading Doctor. So it's one-to-one tuition. It's delivered from a Reading Doctor's home, from their reading room, which is like a fully resourced mini classroom set up with hundreds, thousands of books. Not hundreds of thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of books. And each child gets their own little, looks like a laptop bag, Reading Doctor bag, with all their own, we call it like their toolkit. So they have all their resources that help them to move to the next stage. The child has complete ownership of it. So they know sort of what level they're at. They know what they're already doing. They also know where they need to go to next, and they know what they need to help them to get there. So it's all about ownership, problem solving, positive language. We also take the intervention into schools, mainstream and special schools. It sits brilliantly in pupil referral units, in SEMH schools, so schools for children who've been excluded, who have social, emotional, mental health difficulties. It's not unusual for us to meet a 16-year-old who can't read at all. And, they've got a reading age of 5. And so you don't go straight in with like, right, come on then, let's get reading this book. First of all, you might have to catch the book that they've thrown at you because they've told you they're not effing reading, because they don't effing like reading. And so you have to sort of you have to build a relationship first with them. So it's all about relationship building, them trusting you. Quite often I'll say to those teenagers who haven't been taught to read, I will say, look, you've been in our education system for 10 years or more. You've been going to school most days for 10 years or more, and nobody's found a way to teach you to read. Nobody's taught you the way that you learn. So that's the big thing for us. We teach the way they learn. We find the way they learn and we teach them that way. And you just see the weight off their shoulders, because you just say, it's not your problem anymore. We're here to help. And there's quite a few of us Reading Doctors that are in these schools. Some of them are private, sort of independent special schools that are funded by local authorities. And it's like their last chance really to learn to read. And there's, huge correlation with teenage pregnancies and teenagers who turn to crime, prison inmates. There's a huge correlation with low literacy and deprivation, poverty, poor health. So what we do goes beyond teaching children to read. I think we have a no excuses policy to teaching children to read. So if we go into a special needs school and we're presented with a 14-year-old who can't read, once they've gone through our program, they will be able to read. They will be able to have a functional reading age that can get them through in life. They might not ever be an avid reader who sits there reading novels, but they can read.
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
It's amazing, really, because I think children like that, they probably feel like they've been given up on by the community, by society, that haven't found a way to help them. And it's probably exacerbated in today's world, because I think everything else is personalized to them, right? So if they go on to I know my kids go on kids YouTube, but it's all personalized to the stuff they want to see and want to watch all the time. For us as adults, going on to Amazon and advertising everywhere, it's all tailored to us, right? But sometimes, teaching isn't it, as a whole, education. And I know that's a whole nother subject that could go on for hours about. But what I'm getting at really is it's great that you're actually personalizing the process or the learning process to fit the individual. who needs it the most. So it must have a really massive impact on local communities, I would imagine, for you and for your franchise partners.
Yeah, and it's great that as part of what we can do both of those things. We can have the private pupils that come to our house, but we can also reach out to those that really need it in those schools as well, in mainstream and special schools. And yeah, particularly those that, yeah, this is their last chance really, and they're really angry. Some of them are really, really angry at the fact that they have been going to school for all those years and they can't read. And most of them do blame themselves. They blame themselves, and a lot of their behaviours, the cause of them being excluded from their mainstream schools is because they've got really frustrated because they can't learn the way they're being taught in school. And this is not, it's not a criticism of the teachers, because all teachers in all schools are doing their best within the system. It's just that some children need something bespoke. They need something completely tailored to them and their learning, and to help them overcome their obstacles. And that's really where we come in. We're not a general tutoring service. And quite often, this has happened this week actually, one of my franchisees assessed a child and she just said to the parent, they don't need me. I've done that quite a few times. I've assessed and I've said, you could go and get a standard tutor. You don't need something quite as bespoke as this. So it really is quite a niche thing. Yeah.
Perfect. So I wanted to ask you, and I'm cautious that you might not be able to give the answer to this one, but is there, I just want to change sort of the mood slightly now to move on to, is there something in your career or your work that's entertained you, found funny or is strange, or any good stories that you'd like to tell? You'd be happy to share.
Well, there are a few. Some of them can't be told.
Of course.
Too funny. But actually, one funny story from when I was a teacher, a class teacher, was when I decided that it would be a really good idea for my own children, to come to the school where I teach, because I just thought that would be easy. They can come with me in the morning, breakfast club, pick them up after school, fine. And it was just after school, and my girls had gone out onto the climbing frame just outside my classroom, and some of the parents were still sort of hovering around from the end of the day. And one parent came in and said, "Oh, just to let you know, Mrs. Salsbury, your daughter's naked on the climbing frame." And she'd completely stripped off on a hot summer's day. She was only in reception. But yeah, so that was, I sort of thought there was a few things, and I just thought, I think it's time to move my children out of the school where I teach. I think for them and for me.
There's always one, isn't there? But it's not good if it's your own.
And then there's been lots of things. Like I remember when I was a year one teacher, I know now why this child thought the way he did, but he'd just drawn a lovely picture of himself and brought it up to me to show me. And I just said, "Oh, that's great." And I said, "Have you finished?" He went, "I've nearly finished it." I said, "Oh yeah, it's lovely. Just go and put your feet on it, and then that'll be done, really, won't it?" And so then I was just standing looking, and I could see him just standing right in the corner of the room. And I just went, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm putting my feet on it." And he was just standing on his drawing. And I know now that, that some children see things very literally, So
Brilliant.
there are, but I mean, some of the funniest stories, obviously happen in the staff room and things like that, and that involves lots of great teamwork to get teachers through the day and to have a bit of a laugh at lunchtime and break times and things. But I think the climbing frame one stands out for me.
Fantastic. I love that story. That's brilliant. Just makes me chuckle, because I know I've got all that to come, even more with my two kids. So no, that's great. Well, look, I think we're coming towards the end of the conversation. I best let you go, but before I do, I just wanted to touch on franchising one more time and just ask you if there's anybody listening to this who's thinking about buying into a franchise, whether it's yours or any others. Is there one piece of advice that you would give to them?
Just an overarching piece of advice would be, do something if you're starting up a franchise, or if you're going into someone else's franchise, do something you love, do something you're passionate about, do something that, I know it's a real cliche, but doesn't feel like a job. Yeah. And I think this past year or so has made a lot of people think more like that, because, you know, it's not just about making money. It needs to be something that you really are passionate about, that you can really make a difference through doing it as well. Yeah, so I think that would be my main piece of advice. And if you're looking to come out of employment and going into either setting up a franchise yourself, I would say, I don't know if there's a standard time frame between people setting up their own business and then franchising it, but I would say probably took me a bit longer than most people do, I should imagine. But, you know, mine was about 7 to 8 years of me doing it before I got everyone else to do, you know, to join in. And I think that timing was perfect. I hadn't quite got everything perfected up until that point, because it took all that trial and error of me setting it up, of doing it, of buying stuff, dismissing stuff, trying things, embracing some things, getting the right people around me as well, and to get the support of your family. You know, I've had my husband has been very, very supportive from the beginning, and he still now goes to the post office delivering parcels for me about 15 times a week. When I set up a reading doctor, he drives, drives the car up there and unloads, and that, you know, all of that, and lots of other things as well. But my sister has been like, I couldn't have done it without my sister.
Fantastic. Well, I feel there's a lot of passion you've put into building up your business, and so wish you all the success in continuing to grow it and helping others realize their dreams. So all that's left for me to say really is thank you very much for sharing your story with me. It's been a real pleasure getting to know your background and your business a bit better. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
Cheers, Deborah. Take care. Bye.
Bye.